the same token, those of you that have got tape recorders and all the rest of it, yeah, sure, go ahead. Don't forget to press the record button, because it's always something you can fall back on and, as I said, learn some kind of procedure outside of the amateur procedure, but not only that, understand the methodology that is utilized and why it becomes important that even as a listener, if you were presented with a situation, why some people will come back to you outside of radio amateur procedures per se, or you will understand what it is that you need to provide as far as information is concerned to whomever it is that may in actual fact answer your call in times of need. So I just need to clear the timeout timer and also the throat. ZS6OPS returning. Guys, what I wanted to do is I just wanted to, for about 10 minutes or so, very briefly follow up on the talk that I gave last Sunday afternoon on the psychological impact. And for those of you that didn't attend, I've just got to go and edit the video a bit. I need to make sure that I don't have extremely long lead-ins and lead-outs and all the rest of it, but I will make it available on the site for you to download. So if anybody did miss it, they can always download it and go and watch it and get some insight into a personal experience, which, you know, for those that did listen in, I literally just opened up and spoke from my heart yet again. So this afternoon, just for a few minutes, I just want to do a follow-up on it. Now, last week was a personal experience, but that is not what I want to follow up with at the moment. I want to follow this through with the psychological impact of the persons who are affected by large-scale emergencies and disasters. And I want to really just touch the surface of that iceberg. And as everybody knows, you see these great big beautiful white icebergs floating out in the ocean, and it's only 1/3. 2/3 of it is submerged. 2/3 of it is what you don't see. 2/3 of that iceberg is what you forget exists. And it is that 2/3 that becomes one of the major disastrous contributing factors to the destruction of vessels that travel around those icebergs. Now, as MCOM operators, as disaster relief personnel, we need to be aware of the fact that there is 2/3 of the disaster or the emergency that is submerged below the surface of the waterline that we cannot see, that can actually turn around and bring about further destruction and devastation to our local communities where we are working or where we may be deployed to. And that 2/3, I'm going to say, is the following. It is the people that are involved in the disaster or the emergency. The physical human beings in particular that make up and constitute the 2/3 of the iceberg. You know, I opened up a WhatsApp conversation with somebody now in the last 2 weeks or so, new amateur, and was basically telling them what it is that we were doing with regards to the emergency comms radio network here on a Sunday afternoon and CERT. And the first question that was put out to me in writing was, okay, so what are you guys going to do if a tornado rips through the West Strand? It was as simple as that. And I know that this tornado concept has been a point of our discussion over the last 2 years in particular, having witnessed the escalation of tornadoes that have come through the West Rand in particular, but with far more devastation out on the East Rand than what we have experienced. And that tornado itself is the 1/3 of the iceberg. And you need to ask yourselves the following question after my TOT. Right, ZS6 OPS returning, leaving a short gap for any breakers that might have emergency traffic. All right, so let's take a scenario, any scenario, whether it be tornado, whether it be a major flood, whether it could be a building collapse, a structural fire, a major motor vehicle accident out on the highways, the November 1, the November 14. There's always a potential of mass casualty incidents. Just further south of where most of us actually are, we got a railway track that runs east to west through Roodepoort itself. We could be subjected to a train accident. And what we need to ask ourselves is, how does this affect the people themselves that are personally involved in one of these incidents? So whether they're a passenger on the train, whether their entire suburb has suddenly been whacked out with water due to flooding for whatever purpose. And guys, on the point of flooding, please, let's not be naive. It can happen. We might not have one of the major rivers running through our area or past us or nearby us, like you would see in the Vaal Triangle. But infrastructure collapse, infrastructure blockage. We do have the Crocodile River. We have a couple of other smaller, what appears to be little streams. That little stream can run for kilometers. Tornadoes, taking off of rooftops, taking off of, or coming through the shopping centers like we've seen. People inside the shop can hear that pitter-patter on the roof, and it's not the birds, but it's the rain, it's the hail, and then suddenly everything just collapses on top of them. Have any of you actually considered what goes through that person's mind at the time that they find themselves in this situation? You know, after last week's talk, somebody said to me, you know, it made me think, what would I do with regards to my family? How would I be able to handle it and cope with it if that was to happen to me? And that is the whole purpose of the MCOMnet, to bring you guys to the point, and gals, to the point of thinking about how we would deal with things. And it is only when we actually ask that question that we subconsciously open ourselves up to receiving the necessary training to be able to cope with or to handle a situation. And guys, I'd like to remind you about that CPR course. I mean, that CPR examination portion, the first one. I'd mentioned that I had been on the road and on ambulances for the better part of, I don't know, 8 years, and yet I still failed. because of the emotional and the psychological impact that the examination scenario had on me, because I did take it personally. So we're down to, right, so that's us. But now we need to shift our focus. Whilst we focus on our inner self, we also need to shift our focus to the persons or victims of disaster and emergencies. And after this time, I want to extend that even further. ZS6IPS returning. So far, we've covered our personal selves last Sunday. Tonight, I am touching on the victims of emergencies and disasters. And we need to ask ourselves, what do we do for them? And before we can even ask that question, we need to ask the question, what can be going through their minds? And then secondly, what do they need? In order for us to get to a point of saying and asking, right, what do we do to assist them? How do we find a working solution? You know, I'm sorry, guys, there's only one thing that's coming to mind, having gone through those three questions and ultimately ending with what is it that we can do to help them. I'm going to have to go right back into the Red Cross principles and the principle of humanity. The whole humanity principle for Red Cross is to alleviate suffering. Here's a key word. Wherever it may be found. And I think as human beings, we should all adopt and even adapt to the thought process of Henry Dunant in the late, 1890s, whereby he wrote that very first principle. And I think once each and every single one of us can role play the possibilities of how do these people feel, what is going through these people's minds at that time, and personalize it and say, well, how would I deal with that? And then look at what do they need, and ultimately end up with, right, what can I do to assist? MCOM is one small portion of being able to assist others or to alleviate that suffering of others. And I said after the timeout, I want to extend this one step further. So I'll do it after this TOT. There we go, ZS6IPS returning, and as per usual, by my nature, personalizing what it is that I'm saying to you. My body temperature's increased and I've now gone down to short sleeves and all the rest of it because, oh man, that passion. Yeah, Margie, you can have a closer look. You know me. You know me too well, Margie. There we go. Yeah, for those of you that don't know, Margaret Rutter, My operations officer at SARCS for many, many, many years worked very closely together. Actually read my mind more often than I read my own mind. So let's move on. And let's extend this brief discussion to another set of potential victims or sufferers. We've got ourselves sitting in this, let's call it first responder category. We've got the victims of disaster or those affected by disaster or emergency. We are asking questions of the personal nature. We are asking questions regarding those that are affected. And the third category of persons that we need to concentrate on is the families and family members of those people who are affected by that emergency or by that disaster. So guys, I'm going to throw this at you in this way. Take four. Think of four of your closest family members. You don't need to mention them. You don't need to discuss this with them. I want you personally now to role play a situation whereby the four of them become involved or find themselves involved in any emergency or disastrous situation. If it is of such a nature that they are transported off to a hospital, but there's no contact with you, what will be going through your mind at that time as a family member? And guys, listen, that family member could be sitting in Cape Town, you sitting up in Roodepoort, Krugersdorp, Carletonville, even Pretoria. Ask yourself, what would be going through your mind in that situation? You see, so psychologically, there are a multitude of people that are affected. You've got the secondary victim called the family member. Again, internalize it, personalize it, draw it from within yourself. When you do that, I can assure you, a passion will, guaranteed, will rise up within you, which will become a guiding light, a motivation, and give you a purpose whereby you can be of assistance to others or to alleviate the suffering of others. So the psychological impact of emergencies and disasters does not only infect. You know, I'm beginning to wonder if that word infect isn't relevant, but affect first responders and or the auxiliary services that are involved in the incident, but the victims themselves, and then last but not least, the family members of those people. I'm going to clear the timeout timer. I want to come back and I want to give you one last point, and then we're going to close the net. ZS6OPS returning. Okay. On the third category of psychologically affected persons, I want to refer back to an incident in the late 80s where we were sitting in the office and suddenly we started receiving telephone calls from people that we didn't know, to be quite honest. And by the time that the switchboard had answered the third or fourth call, the operations department actually came together, which consisted at that time primarily of the regional director, the operations director, the operations manager, and the operations officer. And we gathered around the table and said, what is actually going on here? Needless to say, our operations officer, Margie, ducked and went and got a little bit more information. The operations director ducked and got a little bit more information. And me being me, I just carried on being me, and I continued with all the stirring across the board. So we don't need to worry about that. I mean, people say I'm a troublemaker. Well, there we go. So within an hour, we had come to a simple conclusion that, and you know what, with the name changes of countries and everything else today, I don't know if I'm in South Africa or in the middle of Africa. But I think it was Zaire, Kinshasa, somebody correct my geography if I'm wrong. There was civil unrest that had flared up literally overnight, to the point that many of the population decided they were getting on a plane, they got into cars, they got onto trains, they did whatever they wanted to do to get out of the country. They were fleeing. The official term for them arriving in South Africa were displacees. And slowly but surely the number of calls started to escalate, and Margie and Neil and a few others started making contact with the embassies and everything else. And we discovered that we had a displacee situation that was escalating beyond anybody's control, including that of like Lanseria Airport, where they were taking in the most numbers of displacees. So needless to say, within 24 hours, I disappeared. Margie and them didn't know where I went. I actually went home. I pulled out my old XT computer and I quickly wrote together a tracing program, brought it into the office the next morning, following a couple of media releases and media interviews that Margie and Neil had in particular with radio stations. We put the information out that Red Cross was now open to gathering the information of the displacees so that the family members worldwide could find out the well-being of the people that were fleeing Kinshasa. Now, guys, that is a part of communication. You know, we didn't do that by radio. You'd be surprised how we did most of this. For example, the airports and various embassies were sending us that information in order for us to record it on the database that I had written the night before via good old-fashioned fax machines. What can we say about technology? That whole operation was literally done via copper telephone lines, by fax and by voice. Now, had I known then what I know today and the capabilities of radio, man, I tell you what, we could have had a beautiful operation running there. We could have had contact with all the other countries around the affected area and gathered even more intel. The point is this: our concern wasn't the people coming into South Africa. We were reaching out to the family members of the people coming into South Africa. So guys, I want you to think and stretch on that one. Right, last round. Any questions? Anything else along those lines? Go ahead. If not, bid your 7-3 and we're closing the net down. ZS6SNY, ZS6OPS.
the ENG. Thanks, Chad, for the heads up on this one. I've been involved in that, remember that cash in transit, and I could tell you the effect that it has on you as a close one is real. People must not think that this is not real. There's a reason why I'm saying to you, everybody.
All right, thanks, Adrian. ZS6 JRM, ZS6 OPS.
ZS6 OPS, ZS6 JRM. Chad, I don't have anything to add, but I do just want to answer your previous question regarding the other hand on stations in Randburg, promote more specifically. So that's that, and I'm going to bet you 7-3, Nate and Chad, back to you, ZS6 OPS, ZS6 JRM.
Okay, thanks, James. ZS6 ART, ZS6 OPS. All right, sorry, the net got broken there. Arthur, just stand by. Sorry, who called in now? ZS6 OPS standing by.
Sorry, I was mobile. But anyway, ZS6 OPS, sorry, there was a net. Sorry, I apologize. I didn't hear. I was busy with antenna, but okay, thank you, and sorry, I won't be coming back.
Sorry, Mario, is that you? Confirm. ZS6 stand, ZS6 ops.
Oh, I accidentally, I broke in, sorry, I heard, and then, sorry, but anyway, good evening, and I won't be coming back, but it is Mario.
All right, good stuff. No, you're more than welcome to break in there and let us know that you are there. We'll add you, and you can listen and participate and all the rest of it. But I do take note that you're not coming back. All right, I'm going to move on because I want to close the net down. Mr. Arthur, ZS6 Alpha Romeo Tango, ZS6 Oscar Papa Sierra.
ZS6 OPS, ZS6 IoT. Yeah, nothing to add, zero traffic from my side. Just to add on to the earlier introduction, I am in the Bitworthy area, so basically right between Krugersdorp and Rudderpoort. 7-3 all, ZS6 IoT here.
Okay, thank you, Battis. Correction, my apologies. ZS6 Whiskey Mike Bravo, ZS6 Oscar Papa Sierra.
ZS6 Whiskey Mike Bravo returning. Okay, Chad, I've got nothing to add there. I'm just going to say 7-6 night and have a lovely week. ZS6 OPS, ZS6 Whiskey Mike Bravo.
Okay, thanks a lot there, Battis. ZS6 VIL, ZS6 OPS.
Yes, for that, if we can all of us can understand, we must also understand what is our own shortcoming so that we can go forward and get it fixed and sorted out. From my side, everybody 73, and I hope you have a wonderful week. ZS6 OPS and the next ZS6 victory really.
Thanks, Battis. ZS6 SCO, ZS6 OPS.
ZS6 OPS, ZS6 SCO. Thanks for that, Chad. Yeah, it needs to sink into a lot of people's minds about the trauma after effects of a disaster in any case. But yeah, thank you for that. So everybody on the net, 73, have a good week. I'll be standing by for the rest of the evening as well anyway. Yeah, Chad, thank you. ZS6 OPS, ZS6 SCO.
Thanks, Norman. ZS6 KOE, ZS6 OPS.
ZS6 OPS and the group from ZS6 KOE. Good evening all. I had nothing to say. All I can say is hope you have a wonderful week. See you all at Antenna Day, and good night. ZS6 OPS from ZS6 KOE.
Okay, thank you, Vaughan. ZS6 JFK, ZS6 OPS.
ZS6 OPS, ZS6 JFK. Thanks for everything, chat. And yeah, I hope you guys had a lovely week. Thank you.
Thanks there, Chris. Gideon, let's try and see if you break through. I'll leave a bit of time for you there. ZS6 Golf Juliet Hotel, ZS6 OPS. All right, Gideon, still no contact there from you. Definitely didn't break through on the repeater. But I'll move on and we'll give it to ZS6 Echo Mike Whiskey, ZS6 OPS.
ZS6 OPS, ZS6 Echo Mike Whiskey returning. Yes, chat. Yeah, good object or good, hoe sê hulle in Afrikaans, 'n goeie onderwerp. I was 15 years in the traffic department and I was also a first responder to many scenes. But yeah, good advice from your side. Thanks, Chad. 06 OPS, 06 EMW.
Okay, thanks, Edgar. And moving on. You know what? It's www:// Okay. I'll have to find something for this one. ZS6 Whiskey, Whiskey, Whiskey. ZS6 OPS.
ZS6 OPS. This is the ZS6 Whiskey, Whiskey, Whiskey returning. Thank you for the lesson for the food support. It's always a valuable thing to go through these mental exercises to prepare, even if such things never happen. If they do, you're already forced through it. Chad, at the beginning of the net, you mentioned a site where you have some recordings of some of the previous net. Could you give some details about how we can find that, please? ZS6 OPS, which is ZS6 Whiskey, Whiskey, Whiskey.
Yeah, affirmative. I'll send that to you. It's a long address. We'll be here for another hour. So I'll send that to you in due course. Let's move on. ZS6 FER. Are you still mobile? ZS6 OPS. All right, I think Francois is on taxi duty, so he might be out of range or might be at home. Maria, do you want to do a final round there? ZS6 TAN, ZS6 OPS. Okay, nothing heard from Maria either. Ladies and gentlemen, Margie's gone off soon. Thanks for joining this afternoon's net. Always nice to have you guys up and be able to work through and build and grow and encourage and all the rest of it, which is what the net is all about. So I'd like to bid you all 7-3. And for the listeners out there, I still encourage you to call in, give your call sign. If you don't want to participate, yeah, just say you're listening. I probably won't call you back. Or name me, I will probably call you back at some stage in any event. But please, rather just call in. Have a good week. And of course, be safe, be prepared, and most definitely be happy. This is ZS6 Oscar Papa Sierra, now releasing 145.625 for general use. Cheers all.
ZS6 Oscar Papa Sierra, ZS6 Alpha Golf Echo, and then to the net. Good evening. I'm sorry I wasn't able to participate tonight, but thank you, and sorry that I couldn't participate. ZS6 AG going clear.
All right, Gordon, how's it? Trust you well there. Hope you heard some of it. Not a problem. I wonder if there's any others that we'd like to just get added to the bottom of the list. So let me just stand by. If you want to get added, give you a call sign, I'll add you. ZS6 OPS, now clear, 7-3 all.
06 Juliet, Charlie was listening on the speakers.
Okay, acknowledge there, Jan. Thank you. I'll be standing by in case anyone else wants to get added. ZS6 OPS, clear. All right, last station still not getting through from ZS6 OPS. All right, Mr. Brad. I've unmuted you.
Can the audio appear?
Yeah, otherwise it gets a little bit echoey, doesn't it?
Yes, yes.
All right, I'm going to send you, I'll send you the link.
Okay.
It's basically, you know, the CERT, or the Community Emergency Response Team, which I now launched at the beginning of the year. It's got nothing to do with amateur radio.
Okay.
It's got nothing to do with Hamnet. It's got nothing to do with the South African Radio League. ZR6JC, ZR6 IPS.
Yeah, we're always listening, but the mic is very, very far off the belt when I'm down at the bottom. Chad, we've got a few strange scenarios that I just did on the frequency as well. That someone's keying continuously over and over on the 787 part repeater. I just thought I'll let you know. So it's uncomfortable for some people, and the keying out other people. I don't know if it happens often. Yeah, I don't monitor this frequency often, but I thought I'll let you know there this morning just before the bulletin as well. All right, there we go. The 36 OPS, they're on 6 Juliet Charlie.
Yeah, Johan, I don't know where it's coming from. It's actually been happening on and off for a couple of days now. So we'll have to maybe just monitor it, eh? Okay. I'm out of here now, and Brad has disappeared. Margie's disappeared. I was on Zoom with him, but he said he had to go somewhere. So if he is listening, I'm out of the office now. Brad, we'll pick it up later. Jan, we'll chat later. ZS6, correction, ZR6JC from ZS6 IPS. 73, I'm clear.
Chad, 73, they're on 6 Juliet Charlie listening. You're more than welcome to WhatsApp